Okay, so this is going to be 30 minutes dedicated to talking about the reality of what's happening in India, how India is building AI, and what are some of those challenges we have to overcome to go faster and to go bigger, right? But the work has definitely started. So, Pratyush, I'm going to start with you, if I may. So, congratulations. The first big Indian AI startup to get a big ticket funding. And I think it was fabulous, not just because the funding happened, but I think you brought confidence back into the system that we can attract these big ticket funds in India as an Indian startup. And I love what Hemant of Lightspeed said, that he was very excited by your approach to combining model innovation and application development to build population scale solutions in India. And I think that's key. That's what's going to define in AI built in India. It has to be about problem solving and at population scale. So tell us a little bit about Sarvam, what you are building, you know, where do you want to take it? What's your vision?
Yeah, thanks, Debjani, and thanks for inviting us. And
I
great
think take that mic, it'll be better.
It's better? Is this better? Is it on? Yeah.
Can you guys hear?
Hello, is this better?
Previous one, okay.
How is this?
Perfect.
Seems loud enough, yeah. No, thanks for the invitation and great to meet all of you, and congrats to Professor Ganesh on the release of Hanuman. Now, to your question, yes, we did receive some funding, and we primarily see that as both the responsibility and right for India to build big time in AI. And to your point about India is doing things, indeed India is building a lot of stuff in AI. It might not be very obvious to various people, but there's a lot of potential and there's also a lot of action on the ground. A little bit about the journey of how Sarvam started. So I was a professor at IIT Madras and also collaborating with various institutes. And along with other faculty members, we started AI for Bharat. This was already 4 or 5 years back. How do we build AI that is meaningfully useful in India, solving India's challenges ground up? And that exercise was very interesting for me. I come from a systems background, and like everybody else, learned AI along the last decade of innovation in AI. And I realized that at the heart of it, it is about solving systems challenges at extreme scale. If you have the data, if you have the compute, if you understand the techniques, you go out and build it. In fact, if you look at OpenAI, the dogged clarity they had that if you just go much larger, you get significantly better models. I think that is what has played out. And in a smaller way, we did that at AI for Bharat. We released data sets, models, and now it's a very successful part of the government's own Bhashini effort. Now, the interesting part in AI for Bharat was that we collaborated with Vivek Raghavan and Ekstep Foundation, which had a very interesting and probably world-leading view of how technology should be built at a population scale, where there are standards, there is digital public goods and infrastructure, and if you combine them appropriately, you can actually build systems that not only scale, but also then provide data back for these models to improve, right? So these two ideas, that you make systems large and go for scale, that is what this new generation of AI is all about, and to combine that with population scale thinking, public good at a national level. I think these two ideas worked out very well. I should admit that though I was working in this area, I didn't see ChatGPT coming, right? The fact that suddenly the model that is significantly larger is so much better, we didn't see it coming, right? But when we did see what it is possible, what it's capable of doing, we realized we have to go all in and build something like Sarvam. And just one more point about what Sarvam is and what the game really is, right? Of course, we need to build these models in India that represent Indian languages better, Indian culture better, and so on, right? But there are several second-order effects that we need to build for, right? What is it that Indians really need to do with these models? We don't want a ChatGPT clone that streams text back. That's not how India will consume AI, right? India will perhaps consume AI like we saw in the video of a mechanic asking something in voice and trying to get help, right? Or somebody else being able to on demand get help for the NCERT textbook that they are studying, which the government has prepared, right? So I'll talk more about it as we go. But the intention, in fact, Sarvam in Sanskrit means everything. And I'm confident that we will not come to the end of 2025 without a GPT-4 class model being open source. And we will not, maybe in another couple of years, devise a a personal device would be able to run a model of that ability. The question for all of us is, what will we do with that, right? These models are coming. Many of them will also get open sourced with contributions that we'll all make, and they will become significantly more accessible, right? I think the second order effects, which I'll talk more about as we go, is something that we really need to think a lot about and see how to think what India needs to do in that space. So that is the ambition of Sarvam, and we would love to work with everybody and make that happen.
No, fantastic. And one thing about Sarvam, Vivek was once giving me a demo, is it speaks to me in the language that we Indians speak in. We don't speak in like perfect Hindi or perfect Bengali or, it's a mix. And I love the way that Sarvam speaks in that language. So fantastic job. Since we are on the topic of LLMs, who in this room has not heard about PARGP? No hands up. So everyone has heard about PARGP. We all know that there's something big happening. The person behind PARGP, one of the people behind PARGP, Professor Ganesh, tell us a little bit about what PARGP is and how it's coming together. I think I love the journey you guys are on. So tell us a little bit about it.
Thanks, Debjani, for this opportunity. Thank you. There's a lot that happened prior to PARGP. We've been working since GPT 2 days with Adobe, IBM Research, Google, on a lot of open source model, Amazon as well. And one of the core competencies we built is frugality. How can we do compute efficient training, data efficient labeling? We in fact brought out a platform, open source platform called Decile. Decile stands for data efficient learning. In fact, there was a end-to-end document machine translation, OCR system called UDAN project, video analytics. A lot of this work directly under the supervision of Ajit Doval. What we realized through all this experience is, while we were able to build products, we were demanded to bring them to TRL level 6, 7. Now, when OpenAI came out, the former telecom secretary, Mr. Rajaraman, he reached out to me and said, can you do something in this space? PARGP. He coined the term PARGP, not me. And he actually connected me to ministry all over, Ministry of IT, Mr. Ashwini Vaishnav's office. And what was interesting is that they encouraged us to partner with industries, reach out to all academia. That's how we created this large consortium. And build a PPP, private-public partnership, because we have trust. Some of us, academia, we can't do delivery. So we have delivery deficient. Some are trust deficient, some are scale deficient. Can we bring them together? And interestingly, while Mr. Mukesh Ambani was very kind, he responded favorably to be a partner. When I met Dr. Vishnuvardhan at Boston, I could see the strength of the Boston ecosystem, the MIT ecosystem. He said, you guys should not be treated as cheap labor. It's a message I would really want to echo to all industries here. Academy is not cheap labor. You do what you're good at. Why should you bring things to TRL level 6 or 7 before you're heard? That's the industry's job. We work with you. And he not only put his skin, he put himself in the game. And while we were engaged with him in the healthcare space, now he has expanded the scope to really support this. That's how Hanuman has come about to be. And now we are confident we can focus on science. That's what we are good at. We continue doing science. We continue bringing out a lot of open source, Hanuman being one example. And what we are also confident is through initiatives. So there's a PARGP also vertical being created at IIT Bombay, thanks to the DST. One of the key ideas there is, how can we bring in regulation and data? So thanks to some mentorship from Professor Ramesh Raskar from MIT, we created this concept of Bharat Data Sagar, where you can do federated learning, not all data has to be shared. That's one extreme end of the spectrum. But how do you create tokenization for the data that people share? Can there be early access to models based on what people contribute? Can it be commensurate? And there's a lot of work in all the top AI/ML conferences on creating this tokenization, so that people know what they're investing the data into and what they get in return. So there was a very nice white paper from Professor Ramesh Raskar, which was for the Ayushman Bharat digital mission. And we kind of bootstrapped around that. So I think there's so much to learn from academia around the world. We have well-wishers at UIUC, we have well-wishers at CMU. That was a place I was supposed to go after my BTech at IIT Bombay for PhD, but I stayed back and I made a visit there and they were very warm and welcoming me. I think we are sitting really on top-notch intellectuals all around the world and we can do very good science while industry delivers.
Now, so for Bharat GPT, for those of you who don't know, it's going to, they're building it as India's LLM for a few sectors. And the beauty of it is how the different IITs, along with industry, has come together, and it's really a consortium that has come together to build this. It's fantastic to see, I call it Team India. Really fantastic to see Team India working together. I'm going to come to you, Sunil. Everything they do would not be possible if it wasn't for the compute. The compute is so important, and we have heard for months and months people talking about how India lacks in compute. Now, you are one of the first companies to actually bring that compute into the country. We'll talk about the H100s that's sitting in your data center, which is amazing. And then it's a very big investment that you're making as a business. Talk a little bit about, are you confident? Do you see enough happening in India? Are you confident that this will pay off? And how do you, why is this so important for you to do?
Thanks, Debjani. This is a story I love to share and I must have shared so many times. Just about 8-9 months back, Jensen Huang, the CEO, co-founder of NVIDIA, was in India. He met the Prime Minister. And Prime Minister asked him that in so many technologies, India, lagged at some point of time, and then India took over as a late starter. But once India started, thanks to the way Indian population adopts digital, and thanks to the way we are able to take technology to on a much larger scale, India becomes a world leader. And we have seen that happening in many, many, many technologies. So Prime Minister asked from Jensen was, how can India become a leader in AI as well? And Jensen said that I'm a technology provider, I'm a chip provider. There has to be somebody from India who can come forward. I will give the chips to him. I will give all the engineering, all the skill set, everything what they need. I will give it, but they have to come forward. Who will have to convert my $1 million chips into as a service model, democratize it, and make it available to every single startup, which otherwise they cannot do. 2 or 3 names came. Possibly that was the right time, possibly the right sense prevailed, and we came forward. We were hosting GPUs for, 600-700 GPUs today I'm hosting in my data center, but they were smaller GPUs, A100, V100, E4s and all, for maybe, VFX creation, online gaming creation, not necessarily for large language models. But that was, I think, good enough experience which we had of hosting those GPUs and going through various use cases that NVIDIA India also sort of prompted us, why don't you do this? And we plunged. Today, we have ordered for, this was around 1 day before Diwali, I remember the date. We ordered for 16,000 H100s. Just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, the whole ChatGPT-4 was trained on about 12,000 A100s, which are 1/4 of the capacity of H100s. So if I'm ordering for 16,000 H100s, it is equivalent to almost 5 ChatGPT-4s. You can actually train at the simultaneously on that capacity. And the whole idea of putting this H100 GPUs in my data center, which has costed us almost like $1.2 billion, and almost half of that more going towards constructing the underlying data center space and powering it on, is essentially that putting in GPUs, putting in the InfiniBand network, which will be basically making a cluster of these GPUs to train the large language model, putting in the right high-speed storage, putting in the orchestration layer, so that people can just log in remotely, on a self-service model, access the GPUs and start consuming the GPUs, whether it is a one single GPU for fine-tuning or whether it is a cluster of thousands of GPUs or for that matter, virtualized GPUs. All of them is possible at a click of a button, the way you are using and you are used to accessing so many of other services on a SaaS or a PaaS model. That is something which is not far now. My first set of GPUs, which is around 4,000, are landing anytime now. I'll love to share those pictures on social media the day they land in my data center. By mid-April, I'll be going live with those 4,000 H100 GPUs. And by August, we'll have another 12,000 getting delivered. So one of the things which Debjani actually asked, I should talk very, very openly, that the time of when India not having the fundamental foundation block of not being able to do AI in India, which is the chips, is no more there. In the next 1 month to 1.5 months, you will see enough capacity of chips with all the paraphernalia around that available in India working on an as-a-service model. Just adding one more point to what Debjani said. A normal chip, if you try to buy, will cost you $33,000. Yeah, and add almost as much amount for paying for the power and the data center capacity for 3 years. So this is something which is not doable if you're a startup or for that matter, even if you're a large organization. What we are doing is we are actually converting all that on an as-a-service model. And when I'm saying as-a-service model, you actually can take one chip now from me in the next 6 to 8 weeks at as low as $2 per GPU hour. Now, one is it is getting you, you are getting rid of all the capex cost and the opex cost of this. You are getting rid of all the complexities around creating this environment. But more importantly, what I want to share, even if you want to take today on a cloud model, let's say from a hyperscaler, you will get it at $10 to $20 per GPU hour. If you take it from some of the large US operators who are giving NVIDIA chips, you are getting it at $4 per hour. What we are able to do on an as-a-service model, not only giving it on a service model, we are bringing it almost as low as $2 per hour per GPU, which is the lowest in the world. So this is the environment we are creating for entire ecosystem of startups and education institutions in India to take benefit of.
So all you entrepreneurs out there, connect with him immediately, and we'll make sure that he prioritizes nasscom members. But anyway, jokes aside, I think it's time to lay to rest this debate or this question that India does not have compute. We are building enough compute for our needs. The big guys are yet to come, but India has a fantastic layer of middle-sized companies like Yotta who are tremendously agile, and they are moving fast. And then when the big guys come, it's going to be a fantastic ecosystem that will get created. I'm going to move to both Pratyush and Professor Ganesh. There's this debate on whether India needs LLMs or not. There's one side that says we have to build our own LLMs, and there's the other side that says we don't need LLMs. We should fine-tune. There are enough open models available. We should fine-tune to build vertical applications. What do you think is the which side is right, or is there a third answer?
No, we should definitely build, right, for various reasons. One, very practical reason, we use the word tokenizer tax, which is today if you take a sentence in English and send it to GPT-4, it will consume a certain number of tokens, which is the unit by which you get charged for the cost and also affects latency of the response, right? Now, you translate that sentence to Hindi or Kannada, and you again pass it through the model.
Yeah.
On Hindi, you would find that it is 3x the number of tokens. And in fact, on Odia, which is my mother tongue, it is 10x.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
That is a tokenizer tax. And it's a fairly fundamental problem, which is that these models need to encode what you have to send. And this encoding is done on some real estate. Think of it as real estate of how do you encode language. And more of that real estate is assigned to the languages for which it is built for, right? Which is English, European languages, and so on, right? So there is that's a very practical problem that you need to address. Absolutely. If you had models built in India, like we are doing, like in Hanuman and so on, you would immediately address that. It's lower cost. It is interactive models. The second is, and people mentioned this about representing India's cultures, Indian values. We have a whole body of traditional knowledge that needs to be represented. But more than that, I would say the following. We are very, very early in a very important tech change, right? And if you just go back to the previous tech change, let's say in the consumer space, social media, right? And Meta was building out, Facebook was building out Facebook at that time, right? And we were talking about, hey, how do we regulate? Do I filter hate speech? How this is a toxic word, this is not a toxic word, and so on, right? But actually, that whole cycle of social media evolved significantly, and there was second order, third order effects, which we just didn't know, right? Unless we are the ones building that technology, we'd always be behind the scenes trying to, regulate others, control others, govern others, rather than being in the driving seat and building what we need for ourselves. And as example, right, the example that you gave, which is in Hindi. We don't speak Shuddha Hindi, right? We use English words, Hindi words, we mix it and so on. In fact, for South Indian languages, which little bit have a classical origin, the difference between spoken language and written language is just huge, right?
Yeah.
I can speak very good Tamil, but I cannot listen to a news broadcast. I just don't understand it, right? And so these are nuances, right? And we don't type in Devanagari script Hindi, we type it in English and so on. So we have our own requirements of culture, of language usage, which we need to represent in these models. And most importantly, we need talent from now that goes ahead and builds it. We are very, very early in this cycle. Today's LLMs and all would look tiny compared to what will be at the end of this decade, right? And we have to be there making the transition happen in that 5-year arc, right? And I think that is the primary reason we need to be building rather than consuming.
I cannot agree more. Professor Ganesh, add to that in terms of who should build these LLMs? Is it government's job? Is it academia? Who should be investing in building the foundational models?
I'll piggyback on what Pratyush was saying and then address what you're asking. Foundational models being built in India based on our knowledge, to me, is a no-brainer. Why? A point that Pratyush alluded to was canonicalization. You need canonical representations that are faithful to Indian languages, faithful to speech. I mean, the fact that there's a lot of what you call pratipadikam similarity across Indian languages, the root forms are similar. Yes, there's a lot of morphological similarity, and in speech it reflects even more. I mean, if you want to look at Indian language speech from the lens of English, I think it's a disaster. And this was totally testified by Dr. Bhiksha Raj at LTI, CMU, when I met him. So we have extensive experience doing this for machine translation when you bring in programming, when you bring in the rules in the form of domain knowledge. There's this another big startup from Stanford called Snorkel, which has been a big inspiration for me, bringing data programming to real-world use cases where the machine input can be overridden by human input. But here we are saying if you're going to do foundationally, you don't need overriding. You actually are going to build this into speech, into prosody. So that's one point I really want to ensure we understand that this large language model consuming or becoming a GPU guzzler, we also need to address by thinking more foundationally and make it more democratic, create a level playing field. A second point in this is when you actually start building these foundational models, right, you get Sanjeevani. What is a Sanjeevani? Because of Dr. Vishnu's bhakti to Ram, our Hanuman got the first Sanjeevani of H100s to Yotta. But we'll also get many other Sanjeevanis. We'll get actual usage from people, which otherwise all the feedback is going into models that are viewed through the lens of English, whether it's Llama or Mistral. Right? And a third very important part is when we do it in-house, we can develop recipes. My students have struggled hard for Code Llama. It's open source, but it took the best of BTech students took 2 to 3 months to understand recipes and make it function. When I work with IBM Research, we train models for healthcare data. I had a Center for Digital Health at IIT Bombay. The poor model, it learned medical terminology but forgot English. So recipes are required. How will our entrepreneurs flourish? Therefore, to make foundational models release ready, recipes are mandatory. I think that again happens when we build them from scratch.
I absolutely agree. Unfortunately, this is one conversation I would have loved to have longer, but we are running out of time. I'm going to ask 3 very quick questions, one to each of you, and there's a rapid fire round. I'm going to start with you, Sunil. Will India have its own cloud, or should India have its own cloud? Do you see that happening somewhere in the horizon?
India should have its own cloud, and unfortunately, India started back in 2009 having its own cloud. It was not a cloud, possibly it was virtualization using some virtualization tools. We put a couple of servers like as DC operators and started calling that cloud. And I can openly say as an industry player, we never innovated like the way hyperscalers did. So when 2015 hyperscalers entered into India, our shops just closed, right? Within 6 months, we all started reselling hyperscalers cloud, which I think given the current geopolitical context where only data localization, the data is residing in Indian data center is not important. Even the cloud on which the data is residing, even the control of that cloud, the design of that cloud is also as much important. So India must have for its own sovereign benefits, have its own cloud. I think because of the sheer scale of the hyperscalers, nobody attempted. And whenever I've spoken to stakeholders, including in government circles, they are saying because of people like you that you have not made as good a cloud as hyperscalers, we are forced to go to hyperscalers, right? And all the critical apps of government are running today on large hyperscalers. We as Yotta have started that initiative 2 years back. We are making a new cloud called Yantra. While I'm making a GPU cloud, I will no time, but I can show you that I'm not only bringing GPUs, but I'm also bringing a complete orchestration layer to make it facilitate a complete self-service layer, a marketplace for you to consume models, put your data and train your models. I'm also creating another cloud called Yantra Cloud, which possibly I'm starting with 52 services to start with compared to 200 services of Amazon or Azure. But it is a sovereign cloud made by India, designed by India, created by India, operated by India and controlled by India. And that is something I think will have a lot of takers, considering the overall geopolitical context.
Well, I think choices are always welcome, right? And the more choices we have, the better it is from a consumer perspective. So great to hear the confidence and look forward to it. Pratyush, I want to touch on something you had said, which made me think a lot, which is you had said that per capita AI consumption should become a development indicator of the future. Can you talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, definitely. See, one thing that you may take away from this is, hey, we are saying we should do something about make in India, this is language pride, this is nationalism and so on, right? But much beyond that, I think we should recognize that this is a very, very important technology change. And I think most of you would have seen that, right? And the kinds of things this will lead to, right,
yeah.
is out of the box completely, right? Every student having an automated tutor on call, every person having a high quality doctor available, given the lack of services available in these areas, right? What would this do to the economy? What does it mean for how you and I get trained? What does it mean for how we think about information, how the government operates? Lots of things are going to change, right? And I think that at least in India, I'm confident that we have been doing technology well. With at least bodies like nasscom and also digital public goods and so on. And I bet that India will be the first one to build a population scale responsible AI platform, right?
Amen.
And
Amen.
that would require people like Sunil to invest the compute, but it will require a lot of developers to come and build on top of these foundational technologies, right? And at that point, see today people measure how developed a country is based on how much electricity we use, right? So it's very natural, therefore, to say that in the future you'll say, do 800 million Indians today who have broadband, are they consuming $5 of compute doing very, very helpful AI tasks? Because what you can get with $1 of AI is very, very significant, right? And just compare that with what was $1 of storage cost earlier, right? And the value for the individual behind that payload of compute has suddenly just become so much larger. And I'm very hopeful that at least India will do it right and make it work for everybody. Yeah.
That's a brilliant concept. And I think it's very needed. We should definitely put some thought to that. Professor Ganesh, last but not the least, you've talked about ISRO, and I completely agree that when you think innovation, ISRO stands out. And there's so many good learnings that comes from ISRO. What are, very quickly, some of these learnings that can be and should be applied to the field of AI?
I think frugality, data efficiency.
So frugality is not a bad word.
Yes, it's not a bad word.
Because right now in the AI narrative, if you are frugal, you're not doing a good job.
Absolutely. And frugality based on science.
Yeah.
Right?
That's key. That's key.
So while we are basking in the thousands of accelerators with our collaboration with SML, with Dr. Vishnu, through Hanuman, we are also ensuring that the GPUs are used wisely.
Yeah.
Right? So that we can cater to lot many more people. Otherwise, we're going to have a lot of carbon footprint generated. That's one very important thing. The other is explainability. And we have seen actually mixtures of models give you explainability even in the process of inference. If you have zillions of tasks, the task can be actually complementary. And we're going to talk a lot about this in our session tomorrow. But do come and see how we can actually learn multiple tasks together. So I think we are all used to joint families in India, and I hope we keep that up, because we all know how a joint family actually, because of sharing, because of interdependence between models, can do much better. So the other important point, which is also important, is that when we focus on building foundational models, getting GPUs, we can also work a lot more open source. So the entire data efficient learning platform, decile.org, is open source. We've been building on it. But what I've seen is a lot of open source is on the decline in India because we are only dependent on compute and wrappers, right? So we can actually give a boost to that when we do it in-house.
Absolutely. I see the event gods has given us 1 more minute. So I'm going to, Pratyush, come to you very quickly. Since everyone's talking about regulation, everyone in India is now a regulation expert, in case you didn't know. So since you are right in the middle of it, you are building it, what is the one thing, we should not do when it comes to regulation, or anything you want to share with respect to how we need to regulate?
We all know that we are a young country and the demographics are going to be positive for the next 2 decades compared to the rest of the world, right? So India's view on regulation should be for the medium and long term. It should not be, hey, what's happening this 6 months? Because nobody knows what's happening this.
Exactly.
Some people do know, right?
Exactly.
But what India needs to care about is we have a large populace that should benefit a lot from these technologies. So we should be pro-technology, of course, apply all the responsible safeguards. But how do we get to 2 decades from now, where India is a tremendously significant power in the world? And we know that AI is enabling every individual at the strategic level also to do good, right? I think thinking short-term, thinking here and now, and making some errors very quickly is one thing we may want to avoid.
Cannot agree. So, ladies and gentlemen, these are the people who are building AI in India, and I'm a huge fan of their work. And I know the kind of commitment, the kind of effort they're putting into it, because as of now, everything may not be perfect. So there are a lot of challenges that they have to work on. But as you can hear from them, I think the commitment is unshakable. So may the force be with all of you. Yes, you wanted to add
Just
something.
adding to the point, Debjani, if we bring in public-private partnership by design and facilitate that, and I'm sure NASScom will be a great vehicle, regulation will be also in by design. And not an afterthought.
Just to add the point, I think Minister was there in the morning and Debjani is as much aware. The government of India and the Minister Chandrasekhar himself are so much pro this public-private partnership model. Government of India is doing lots of things. You'll be hearing that. You must have heard 10,000 crores of budget has been allocated this time around for government to put money into AI GPUs on a PPP model. Government is not buying. Government is just facilitating the GPUs to be made available to startups. So government is doing its own bit, big time. They're acting as facilitator and much less regulators.
No, I think as someone said, the perfect storm, right? This is the perfect storm for India. And please join me in congratulating them and thanking them for what they do. Fantastic work. Thank you.
For more content on tech and leadership, subscribe to NASScom YouTube channel and press the bell icon to never miss an update.